Hi, welcome to the Secret Men's Business Podcast. This is Joey Buzzertool, and on today's show, we're going to be speaking about fear and how fear can actually sometimes cripple men to not actually succeed and do the things that they want to do. On today's show, we're going to go to Washington, the USA. We're going to be speaking to Fletcher Ellingson, who is going to talk to us about fear and talk to us about how we can realize who we are through identification as being male, masculine, men. Hello, Fletcher.
Hello, thanks for having me on the show.
You're welcome. It's good to have you. Can I just tell you, you look like one of my really good friends.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like you look identical to him. I can't wait to show him the photo because he's got like a twin, but he's Irish. But yeah, same sort of face. So
well, you have to show me. You have to send me his picture too, because I haven't met my doppelganger yet.
So today we're going to be talking about fear and about defining ourselves. But before we get started, do you want to just maybe introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Fletcher Ellingson. Yeah, like you said, Joey, I live in Washington State, in a small little resort town. But hey, in this digital world, I can work from wherever I want. So I choose to live somewhere beautiful. But you know, before I give it all my experience, I just want to kind of share what I love to do. Because we're going to talk about what I do, but what I really love to do during the day is play pickleball. I love playing piano. I play the drums. I love singing. I love swing dancing. I'm a huge fan of board games and playing with our kids.
Wow.
Love swimming, biking, and
you need to explain what pickleball is because I've never heard of that.
Oh, pickleball. Oh, you know,
is it like pickles?
No, no, it isn't. it's all the you'll have to Google it because it's all the rave in our country right now. But it's
pickleball.
It's a shorter court than tennis, and the paddles used to be solid wood, but now they're all made out of different materials. And the ball is hard; it doesn't bounce a lot like a tennis ball at all, and it's usually played with 4 people, and it's a high intensity, very fast game.
Is it new? Is it just been invented, or is it old?
No, it's been around since I think the 70s, but there has been this rebirth of it. And I think it's because so many adults in their 40s, 50s, and 60s and 70s are able to play it. You know, it doesn't require a lot of the strength and speed of tennis.
Okay. I'm going to look it up and I'm going to make it big here.
Yeah, there you go.
So let's start with that word fear, false evidence appearing real. Like, I sort of wanted to start off by just asking you firstly, like, what do you think is one of the main factors that allows men to get stuck in fear or get stuck in general in regards to their lives?
Oh man, I am so excited to talk about this. It's just, your questions are really good. So, and this is such a great question. I'm going to answer it, but I think it's helpful first to understand what fear is. So at its very basic level, fear is simply a chemical reaction in the brain, right? That's all that it is. And it readies us for that fight or flight response, which we know. And we all know how fear feels. We get hyper-focused, we get an adrenaline rush, and sometimes short of breath, we feel shaky. But it also can interrupt the processes in our brains that allow us to regulate our regular emotions. It inhibits us from noticing and processing other information, and basically it interrupts our ability to think logically or to consider or question other options, and so we get this tunnel vision. And so, but at its basic level, it's a chemical reaction. But and this leads us to the answer to your question, because you said, why do we get stuck? Why do men get stuck in fear? And so if fear is a response, the $1 million question is, what is it responding to?
Well, it's funny how one of my last questions is a little question I wanted to ask you, and I think that's a really big one. I won't give it away yet, but I mean, what do you think they're responding to? Like, do you think that what's happening in the world now is a big response?
Yes, I do. And here's what I think is at the core of fear. Core is a response to simply a story.
Yeah.
It's simply a story. And And so your question is so good. Why do men get stuck? And it's because men, myself included, we are so practiced at creating stories that are scary, that are based in insecurity. And so we focus on that story, and then the chemical reaction of fear is initiated, and then we get all fearful. And I thought of a really good example of that, public speaking.
Yeah.
Right. So we know from statistics that this is one of the things people are just deathly afraid of, is public speaking. Now, for me, and I'm assuming for you too, we may have a different response to public speaking. And why don't I get fearful? Well, for me, because I have my story about public speaking is that it's going to be fun, right? It's going to be enjoyable. My story is that there's going to be an opportunity to connect with a lot of people, that I'm going to learn something. There's going to be humor. It's going to be a fun adventure.
Was it always like that though?
You know, I've been in front of audiences for decades. I don't remember a time when I was really afraid of it, but I will say that through decades of speaking, I've become way more comfortable than I used to. I don't know that I ever had a fear of it. You know, I probably wasn't comfortable, but now I'm very comfortable, and I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But other people have a story that they're going to look foolish, they're going to embarrass themselves, they're going to look stupid, that they're going to fail. So that fear kicks in, and it kicks in with a vengeance. Like, right? They're like, do not get up in front of those people because you may die. Right?
Yeah, that was me. That was actually, your definition of story was so true. For about 7 or 8 years, I didn't go up on stage because of what you said, and then one day I just thought, I'm going to try it, and then I go, oh my God, all this time I was thinking it was going to be the opposite, and it ended up being this totally different experience. So it was really quite cathartic, but it was also frustrating to go, I wasted 7 years in a way.
Right. Yeah, so you totally can resonate with that example then.
Yeah. So the next question is just a curiosity, because I wanted to ask if then, do you think that there's a little element of denial in there that men are, you know how sometimes men don't want to be vulnerable and they wear masks, and so I see some of my clients and I notice that their fear is actually just a trick that they create to not do the work on themselves. So it's like a denial of, you know, awareness or self-reflection. Do you think that there is a combination, or is that like a rare thing of people being in denial versus, like, you know, me going, it's only a stage, it's only people, just get up there and talk, but instead I was in denial to all that stuff, and I really believed the story.
Yeah. So what I think about that is that I think the real issue that they're facing is the stories that they're practiced at, and they're continually getting, because once we have a story, we become very practiced at telling it, right?
Yeah.
And the story doesn't really change much. We use the same descriptors as we share that story, and the story doesn't feel good. It doesn't empower us. Frequently we feel trapped, and it has us. So therefore, it has us acting out the same situations over and over and over again. And so I think it comes down to the story.
And so how do we, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I always think about evidence, right? Because if fear is false evidence, but then there's no evidence. So why do you think, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm anti-male or anything, but I really want to help guys get this. Like, why do you think there is this slowness to understanding the definition, understanding the concept, that you know, the reality is that it's probably not going to be as scary or not going to be as traumatic as someone thinks? What stops men? Is it just timing, you think? Just evolution of themselves?
Really good question. I think there's a couple things going on. One is that, like I said, we're practiced at creating fearful stories. However, men, all people in general, but particularly men, we're not practiced. We don't understand that we're doing that. And we have this other so it's a real dichotomy because we're also practiced at saying we're not fearful.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
So it's we put ourselves in a very weird position. We claim that we're not fearful, we're brave, or we're just not fearful because if we are fearful, it's like a sign of weakness. But we are creating all these fearful stories, so we really are afraid, but we can't cop to it. So we're really caught in the middle, aren't we?
Yeah. So does that mean that we have to redefine it? Because I actually never thought of that until now. Like, yeah, we're trained to be masculine and to not cry and to be strong. But maybe when, the fear that I'm talking about here is based around a vulnerability and emotion, right? And I know that a lot of men are uncomfortable to say those emotional, soppy, things. But I think deep down everyone wants to be loved. But
Absolutely.
So do you think the word fear is the right word?
I do. I think it's accurate. But let's go back to the acronym false evidence appearing real. I think Wayne Dyer maybe popularized that, right? But it's so perfect because false evidence appearing real, and then your other question was, if it's false, what's the accurate evidence? And I love this because if it is false, and let's just assume that it is. Every time we have fear, almost every single time. I mean, unless you are like in a battle situation or something, really scary like that. We have a lot of evidence that we amass that isn't based in reality. So what if we were going to amass evidence that was based in reality? What would be possible then? So let's take the public speaking one, for instance. If I was afraid of public speaking because I thought I was going to look foolish, so I had amassed all this false evidence. The exercise then would be to begin to look for evidence that would support that this is something that I could do and that it's actually a safe thing that I could do. So I might say, well, who do I know that's a public speaker? Oh, I know Bob and Sarah and, I know a few people. Do they die when they get up there? Oh, no, they don't die. Oh, okay, so it's possible to do it. Then I would look a little closer to home. I'd look, have I ever done any public speaking? Yeah, I did. I was really frightened about it when I gave that address at the school. But did I die? No, I didn't. So what does that mean? Oh, it means that other people can do it. I have done it. So now I need to begin to put together an empowering story. Other people have done it. I've done it. We all survived. Is it possible that I can do this? Oh, it looks like I actually can do it.
So we'll get us out in there with your experience, and what is it that makes? Because a lot of men actually don't take that on.
They do not. No.
They think that it's going to be. I don't know. They think the world's going to fall apart.
Yes. Again, I mean, because we don't, and a lot of men don't do that because it's not in our awareness, right? I mean, there has to be a catalyst or a conversation, just like you and I are having, which is why your podcast is such a blessing to men. Like we're bringing this into other men's awareness, and the only reason it's in my awareness is because somebody took the time to bring it into my awareness, right? So it's like such a blessing. But it is a practice. And Joey, my whole curriculum for my coaching program, it's a 12-month curriculum. It's called The Practice of Feeling Good in Business and in Life. So, emphasis on the word practice. We're going to practice feeling good. And when I say good, I mean courageous, safe, connected.
I love that.
Right? Open, willing, right? Yeah. So it's the practice of feeling good because most of us are practiced at feeling fearful, disconnected, closed, resistant, right?
Yes. I mean, I get excited when I speak to other guys that talk like this because sometimes, you know what I mean? It's like, it's good when you start connecting and networking and you realize there is a tribe of people who believe it because you start off with this resistance and you start off with this, that's too hard or whatever. Do you mind if I quickly just share with you how I got rid of my fear? Because
I would love it.
I mean, I think everyone's got their own story, but about 6 years ago, I woke up and I couldn't walk. So I went from walking to being disabled. And so I had to learn how to walk again, and I had to learn to sit in bed for 12 months and had to learn to let go of my business and let go of everything that I know. And during that time, I was seeing a coach, and he kept saying to me every day, he kept saying, have you surrendered yet? And I kept saying, yeah, I've surrendered. But in reality, I hadn't surrendered at all. And so it took about 7 months. And then when I finally understood what that meant, I walked, right?
Wow.
And so for me, that experience made me realize that if I can go through that, I don't need to worry about anything else.
Oh, that's powerful.
And I've heard other people's stories, you know, in regards to, because, you know, that whole explanation about evidence, a lot of people that I see will always say things like, I know what you're saying, but it's different when you're trying to be it or feel it. But you're right. Practice is about starting. You got to start.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
And so one of the things I do with my clients is we always start small, where the stakes are really insignificant. We look for opportunities to address whatever the issue is, whether it's fear, you know, whether it's insecurity. We look for the small things, and each time we take one of those small things and we have a victory, we move it over to the evidence column.
Yeah.
And we just start compounding and piling up that evidence. And pretty soon it gets pretty difficult or challenging to go back to our old way of feeling because we've stacked up all of this evidence.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't it be good if we could just teach this at school?
Oh my goodness.
Like to 16-year-olds. I mean, like, can you imagine the invincibility?
It would be amazing.
What do you feel, talking about that, can you try and sum up what the younger generation is fearing at the moment versus your age and then maybe my age, so we can have those three sectors? Like, what are some of the fears that are popping themselves up in 2021, 2022? You think? I mean, like, I know it's just your thoughts, but I want to know if they're consistent to other people, other countries.
Yeah. I think with the pandemic, I mean, there's just been so much uncertainty, like, you know, fear of not being okay, fear that the economy is going to crash and burn and not recover, fear that, you know, what does this mean for my career? You know, I think there's a lot of uncertainty, fear of, I don't know that we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know,
how do you then spin that with your clients?
Yes. So great question. And I'm so grateful that we get to talk about this, because I used to be so fearful. I used to operate from a position of fear, even though I was highly optimistic, really positive. I operated from a place of fear.
Right.
Today, my overarching story, again, we're coming back to story. My overarching story about my life is that life is always working out for me.
Yes.
Always
Always.
Working out for me. And it always has, it always is now, and it always will be. Now, that doesn't mean it always feels like it's working out. It doesn't always look like it's working out. But even despite that, I declare I'm trusting that life is always working out. So, and some people would say, well, okay, what about this pandemic? How's that life working out? Well, you know what? I have some thoughts on that. We're not going to talk about it today, and I don't even know how it's working out, but I believe that even this pandemic is life working out for our species.
Sure, yes.
Right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I love it. Oh my God, I love it. Again, I'm so excited that a man's talking like this, because normally it's women that talk like this on the podcast. But I've tweaked it a little bit I've removed the word good and bad out of my vocab. So everything now is I just say the word interesting. Isn't it interesting that when I stay in bed longer, I'm not as productive? Or isn't it interesting that when the pandemic's on, I've got to be a bit more adaptable? So those two words were really causing a lot of damage. And also, I think I just personally really am trying to teach people about what surrendering means, because that okay thing really, it means that you're willing to jump and you don't know where you're going to land, but you know you're going to be okay, because unless you've died, which you haven't, you are going to be okay, because we've always ended up okay.
Yes.
And people forget.
Yep, exactly. And I love that you have removed those labels, good, bad, negative, because I do the same thing. Like one of the rules in my curriculum is there's no good, bad, right or wrong. It's all the main question is does this serve my life,
Yeah.
right? And it's kind of in alignment with what you just said. Isn't it interesting? Like there's a sense of getting curious, right?
Mm.
There's a sense of getting curious in what there is to learn, and how can we look for, or how can we make this serve our life,
Yeah.
empower
Because
us,
it is
right?
what, 'cause it, like with the pandemic, for example, I believe that there's the story, like you said, and then there is, so those, the storytellers are, I don't like the word victim, but they become the repetitive storyteller. Or you become the adaptable. And so, I'm sure you know lots of people that pandemic, bang, they just started creating new ways and they just survived. And now they're just getting on with it like it's a normal day, because really all you have is the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep.
Yes,
That's it. And
yes.
I also have made this little game up in my head that I'm playing a video game and you're an avatar.
I
So
love it.
no one's real, only me. And so it really just gives me a lot more responsibility for the fact that, I can either just sit around and mope or I can do something. Um, do you mind if I ask you, like when you said earlier that you came from fear, do you feel that there was a bit more heaviness and responsibility because you're a father, with that sort of fear about security and
Yes.
being
So
okay?
yeah, those responsibilities magnified my fear. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because there's a lot of fathers listening. So, like, if people do lose their job, you said something earlier about hope and the fact that we're going to be okay. Like, I know you believe it, but what do we need to tell people, guys, to actually connect with, to know that even though there may be some tough moments, that they are going to get through it?
Yes. So, oh man, I wish we had like an all-day seminar to talk about this. We could go so deep. Again, it comes back to, because what I tell my clients is start looking at the things that are so easy to see that we've taken for granted. Hey, you know what? The sun came up right on cue today. I didn't have anything to do with that, by the way,
Mm,
but it showed up right on cue. That's an example of life working out for me. All right. I mean, the fact that my grocery stores are full of food, continue to be full of food. I have nothing to do with it, and yet there it is. That's life working out for me.
mm,
The house over my roof. I mean, I have very little to do with most of my life. I mean, I really the other people driving down the road are staying in their lane. That's I have nothing to do with that. That is
yeah.
life working out, right? The tides come in and out. The four seasons, they show up and do their thing. I have nothing to do with it. That is life working out. So when I when I assert that to my clients, they really get a beginning glimpse of what I mean by life is working out for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
My and I'll just give you one more example. My body pumps about two. My heart pumps about 2,000 gallons. I don't know how many that is in liters, but 2,000 gallons of blood through my body every single day. And I again have nothing to do with it. My life is working out for me, always has,
Mm,
is right now, and I trust that it will continue in the future.
yeah. Sorry if I just sort of I'm staying with this father thing, because I think fathers don't get enough attention. Do you
Sure.
think that there is a hereditary father pass on torch that causes fear? Like, I look at my father and he's the biggest warrior. And I always wonder, how did I learn? I mean, I guess I learned older anyway, but how did I learn to be opposite to that? So do you
Yeah.
feel that men pass that torch on to their
Yes, I
sons?
do. Yes, and there's that there's a I don't know where it is in the Bible, but there's that passage that talks about like the sins of the father or the fathers or will be passed on for 7 generations.
Mm,
And I don't mean think they mean sins like transgressions, but it's like these behaviors, right?
yeah.
So our fathers, I know my father and his father and so on. I mean, there was probably a lot more scarcity in their life. There was a lot more uncertainty, and therefore they just had this fear, and it was modeled for them, right? It
Yeah.
continued to be modeled,
Get a
but
job,
something,
settle
yeah.
down.
And then like in around the fifth or sixth generation, something happens. There's a less of it. There's more security. There's more certainty. People become maybe a little. There's an opportunity for being more hopeful, right? And then, like you, something happened where you broke. You interrupted the cycle, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like a crisis. I mean, some people can do it like you did it on your own, which I get so jealous about, and I had to go through a crisis. But I feel that I really just feel like if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be getting it. I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
Yeah, exactly. You are doing what you're doing. We're having this very conversation because of what happened, right?
Yeah. I mean, but there are other people, I guess, that may not get it though. They might go through the same thing as me and just still become homebound and just have the victim story.
Yes, because somewhere along the line, you made a powerful decision to change your story about what was possible.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, again, comes back to that story thing, right?
Yeah. And so what do you think we need to tell our teenagers? What do we need to tell our teenage boys? Because, I don't know if you know this, but do you know that the most common job request from teenage boys is being famous?
I did not know that.
So being famous is the number one job that teenage boys want to be. They don't want to be lawyers or firemen, or they don't do any of that anymore. They just want to make money and be famous, right? So I sort of can smell a generation of non-fearful men, but I can also smell a generation of men that are going to crash. So what do we need to tell them? Because I think fear can be good sometimes.
Yes. So that's I'm glad you said that, because there's nothing wrong with fear. I mean, we want to get the message of fear, right? The message of fear is that, hey, you might be in danger. Like pay attention. There may be imminent danger coming your way.
Yes.
So, but fear is hypervigilant, and the more scary the story we create, the more intense that emotion of fear is going to show up. So I think what a helpful message for our youth, or the young men and boys in our world, is number one, it's a sign of strength to ask for help. It's a sign of strength to say, hey, I'm not understanding. I have a question. Or I'm confused, or I have a concern, or I'm worried.
Yeah.
I need assistance. I need help. I need counseling. I need coaching. I need advice. That is a sign of a strong individual.
Yeah. Is that happening? Over in Australia, I don't know if you've got it there. We've got this thing called tall puppy syndrome. So Americans are so good, and I just sometimes wish I lived there. But say if you sort of decide to do something like what we do, and then we get to a level of, sharing our message, and then people go, oh wow, this is really exciting, it's good. But then once in Australia, once you hit a certain level, it turns around and people then start telling you off.
Oh, okay.
So rather than saying you're amazing, then they say, oh, we've heard that before. Right. So we cut them down. And the belief about that is, let's keep everyone at the same level. So I think that's fear in it as well. I think them doing that is fear of them being what they want to be.
Yes. Fear of, they're afraid of not being good enough or being left behind, right? This whole thing. I mean, one of your questions was what do men fear the most today? And I think is not being good enough. Not being a good enough provider, not being a good enough lover, not being manly enough, smart enough, fill in the blank, right?
Yeah. I mean, do you think that, again, I'm single, and I have sort of gone through a real bad traumatic experience that's made me look at simplifying everything in my life. I don't know if I'm being really naive, but I sometimes think simplifying is a really easier way to live a life that's filled with fulfillment than fear. I sometimes, when you were talking about all the pressures, I think, God, men buy the big cars and they spend the money on all that stuff. And then they have to, have fear to get the money to pay it all off. And I'm thinking, I wonder what would happen if people just stopped spending all that money. They may actually not have fear to have to get up and go to work. Right. So, do you think there is room for a change in the way that the world sees, the way that we live our lives? Because fear is getting, COVID has definitely accelerated fear, hasn't it? We have to find a way to now either get used to it or reverse it. I sort of see fear as excitement. You know, like, you know,
mm-hmm.
Will I Am, he was in Australia and he was a judge on The Voice. And this girl says, I'm really scared. I don't want to get on stage. And he goes, no, you're actually excited. And I took that on. I go, wow, that makes a lot of sense. It's
Yeah.
actually telling you that it's excitement, but you're calling it fear through the story.
Yes, exactly. What a great distinction, right? And what a great example of reframing. Yeah, it's not just fear. What you're feeling is excitement. What you're excited about is the possibility of of experiencing your dream, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Or
that.
something new. Like I would have thought that more men would have wanted that because of everything we've been through. Again, maybe I'm just a little bit naive, and you know, I'm just new to this thing. But I I do sometimes wonder that it's like we've got blinkers on. Again, I don't know what it's like in America. In Australia, there seems to be, you know, we've got to be this. We call them like Ocker Aussies, right? We have our beer and we just sit around and we just have pot. You know, we get a pot belly and we just. And I'm thinking, okay, we've done that for so long. Isn't it like time that we try something different? When I was reading your blurb, you did mention the word gift, and
Yeah,
we've sort of talked about it briefly. But what is that? What does that mean? The gift of fear.
yeah. So anytime that fear is present, anytime it's present,
Anytime.
there is a beautiful gift right next to it. If we just look to the side, there is the opportunity to be courageous.
Yeah.
And courage is only available to you when you're fearful. That's the only time.
Oh,
Otherwise, it's just called confidence,
right.
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Say that again.
So
I want to just make sure everyone hears that. So
yeah,
courage only comes.
yeah. Courage is the gift of fear. You only have the opportunity to step into a courageous way of being when you are first being fearful.
Right.
Because other people would say like, well, no, I know lots of brave people, or no, if they're being brave, there is fear present.
Mm,
Otherwise, it's just confidence, right? It's
right.
it, and so what is so we said fear is a response to a story. So courage, the act of being courageous means what we're doing is reframing that fearful story.
Right. It also
We're
means that you know
reframing
that.
it.
It also means you know this. You know that it's a story,
Yes.
which is awareness and excitement.
Yes.
Yeah. What do we do when we have people like President Trump and people like our Prime Minister and the media who actually have a vocation to make us scared? Like, how do we
Yes.
distinguish between real fears and fears that are designed to keep us? Because you know, in some way, those things are really designed to keep us small.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you said that. They are designed to make us can play a small game of life,
Right.
right? And nothing feels worse to me than playing a small game of life. Because when you're fearful and acting out of fear and you're playing small, it doesn't feel good. You're just like, I'm just like, oh, why am I doing this?
Mm,
Because I have so much to give. I have all sorts of stuff that I want to experience and do, and then I feel like, oh, it just feels yucky. So what I love about what you just asked is, and my response is this, Joy. You and I, we got to keep doing what we're doing. The people who are listening to this, who also are of this mindset, we've got to continue this conversation, because change and evolution happen from having this very conversation. There's another conversation that politicians are having, and it is all fear based.
yeah.
It is completely fear based. We got to change the conversation and reframe the story that what's possible is living a big life and living a fulfilled life, and that we are resourceful, capable, and flexible people.
Right. Yes. Oh God, I'm getting goosebumps. How I know? Are you able to talk a bit longer? Because we've sort of talked.
Yeah, sure, you bet.
We've really talked for an hour, and we're not even halfway through our questions. I wanted to ask you about what defines a man, right? And I don't know if that that question is universal. I don't know if it's followed through time that, you know, men have all, I was being interviewed yesterday by a female who was asking me these questions, and it was interesting how we came up with a time in history where women were running the world, right? And then religion came in and flipped it, and then it sort of has been men since then. So as you were saying earlier, we've got all that structure. So how do we evolve when I don't think we really fully understand what the definition is in anyway.
Yes.
Do you feel like you know what it means to be a man?
Yes, I do. Okay. Gosh, this is such a good question.
I know, this is like, we're all waiting with bated breath.
So here's where, let me define, I'll tell you how I define myself, because I think there is incredible power and opportunity when we actually intentionally define us, define who we are. And I didn't do this for the longest time, but when I did, Joey, I can tell you things shifted in my life in a big way. And so who I am, so I don't use descriptors like I'm a father, I'm a coach, there's a place for that, but that's not who I am. That's what I do. Those are some of the roles that I play.
Okay.
But who I am is I am a clearing for people to feel safe, heard, and empowered.
Wow.
That's who I am. Like this, you know, I'm in a flesh and bone body, right? And I've got I've got a brain that's running the show and everything. But who I am actually is I'm a clearing for people to feel safe and heard and empowered.
Yeah.
And so I want to encourage men, like, really begin to define who you are.
Yeah. So you sort of don't judge people, do you? So like you're coming from a clearing, which I'm the same, right? So, and sorry if I'm being a little bit picky, because there are so many subgroups. So like, for example, how do the jocks define what being a man versus, say, you know, the older generation versus the generation that is a little bit more introverted? There's so many different subgroups. You know, not everyone's going to connect with the clearing thing at this point. Yes. So do we have to sort of like stop listening to everyone and do what you just said and just connect with us?
You gotta, connect with yourself, really. And the more clarity we can bring to defining ourselves, the more powerful you become. Because when you're living from a place of ambiguity, you're going to get mediocre results. Yeah. Right? You're going to get ambiguous results. When you get clarity, you can begin to make commitments for which you can take responsibility for, and that is the only time that we can experience our personal power.
Yes.
If you're not experiencing personal power in your life, let's say in your marriage, and men, I'm talking to you. I really want you guys to hear this. If you are not experiencing a powerful marriage right now, it's because you have not made a commitment for which you can take responsibility in your marriage. Or you may have made a commitment, but you have stopped taking responsibility for it. And therefore, the marriage is experiencing a disempowerment.
Right.
Does that make sense?
So, yeah, I just want to just define the responsibility means that they just don't expect it just to roll on because now they're together. They work at it. They actually contribute. They listen. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So you make a commitment. Like, so for instance, I've made a commitment to myself to bring flowers to my wife at least once a month. And no joke. Like that's a commitment. And that's a tangible commitment. Now, if I take responsibility for that commitment, I will experience empowerment. Our marriage will experience empowerment. If I fail to take responsibility for it, I won't feel that empowerment.
Yes. Yeah. Right? And so then when things start to separate or get sort of not connected, then you know that it's because you're not committing to that.
Yes, exactly.
Do you add into that the fact that men also need to allow themselves in a relationship to bring in the feminine?
Oh. Hey,
you know what I mean? Like men have to also be gentle, not just hard. Men have to listen, not just tell. But, you know, they hear that word and they go, oh, I'm not going to do that. And I'm thinking, no, you're getting it wrong. It doesn't mean what you think it means.
Exactly. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is know the masculine, stick to the feminine.
Yeah.
Right. So it's knowing who I am. So I am so comfortable in who I am that I'm not worried about not looking manly, right?
But
Because
it's again, the feminine just means that you're there. The flower thing is a feminine energy.
yes,
You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of guys want to rescue, right? What's wrong? And they don't listen. Just shut up, listen, because your wife actually wants to talk to you and use her masculine energy, but you're not letting her. So, yeah, like going back to the jocks and to the, you know, the what do you call the rednecks? All those sort of men. I don't want to say it. Like, how do we just get them to do it?
Yeah. So so again, it's gonna just come from, we got to continue to perpetuate this conversation, right? Just go out further and further with this conversation so that it reaches somebody. Now, a jock can still have can define themselves as, you know, who I am is resourceful, capable, and flexible. I mean, can you imagine, like, if an athlete took on those qualities? I'm resourceful, capable, and flexible. I mean, holy crap. I mean, every athlete needs to be those three things, right? So who I am is that, and I just so happens that I play baseball. Or who I am is this, and it also just happens that I play basketball or football. But that way of being and knowing my way of being is going to magnify the thing that I'm doing or the role that I am playing.
Yes. You do realize I need to have you back, right? Because it's getting closer to. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then if it's okay with you, I'd love to have you back, because I've got like 300 questions in my head right now, and like I really think that when you meet someone that can talk and spar with you, I think it's you can't waste that resource. Yeah. So the last question I wanted to ask you is, when we think about fear again, and you very greatly described what you need to do in a marriage and a relationship, but I do feel that men are a bit scared of women, fearful of women, because of what's happened the last few years with Me Too, with consent, with us being called upon with entitlement and white entitlement and all that. So why do you think, what are the main things that men are afraid of when it comes to females?
I think they are afraid of two things. One, being wrong and not being good enough. When we can surrender, and boy, we got to have a conversation about surrender, because I love this concept of surrender. I really have gotten deep into it in my own life. But when we can surrender our need to be right. Yeah. And when does that mean, are
you talking about being in charge, or are you talking about that what they think is the only way?
Yeah, sometimes those two are really intertwined, right? Yeah. So yeah, being right, just like, we all know people who just, they can't be wrong. Like, even when they know they're dead wrong, they're going to try to like talk their way around it and spin it another way. Like, they just, that thing about that fear of being wrong is so powerful. Yeah. One of the things I got practiced at saying was to people is, like, they'd ask me of my opinion, and I'll be like, well, I've been wrong lots of times before, but here's what I think. Let's just get it out of the way. I've been wrong lots of times. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's taking a while, though, isn't it? I'll tell you something quickly what happened in Australia last year. A really well-known footballer in Australia, rugby, him and his wife were getting separated. They had 3 children, and he just didn't want to accept that. He didn't want to accept that his wife was going to leave him, right? And he just was adamant that she wasn't going to leave. And she was leaving, and then so she got in the car with the kids, and he burnt them.
Oh, geez.
He killed all of them. He'd rather... Oh, wow. I know. So that brought up a really big conversation in regards to all of this subject matter. And I got abused because I was telling guys we need to, call out. I found that really amazing that some men said, oh, it's the wife's fault. So it really made me, I guess, go into the trenches and realize that some men have got those old beliefs when the majority of men could see the changes. So, what you were saying about people, some of the guys believing that they're right. Yes, I agree. Like, they do believe that their view on racism is right, or their view on homophobia is right, or their view on anything is right, and everyone else is wrong. Yeah. So that's when I get a little bit nervous, because sometimes I'm a short guy. Sometimes those guys are big, So I guess you just got to be like what you do. You just create a space. I like that. You just create a space, and people listen and they connect with it in their own terms, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, it's there has been so much progress made, and there's still a ton more that I'm hoping will be made, and I trust it will. But again, it just comes back to this conversation, and this conversation is just golden. So I want to just acknowledge you for showing up powerfully with this show and making it available to others, and really helping bring this onto men's radars, because I believe that when men take responsibility for themselves at a higher level, in every area of their life, when they feel comfortable saying, "Oh gosh, I didn't know that," or "Oh, I made a mistake," or "Oh, I need some help," I believe that the world will be a much more peaceful place.
Yeah, well, it definitely is a much more peaceful place with you in it. Like, I think I'm gonna put all your details in the link below. So like you said, we live in a global world, so there may be some Aussies who are going to reach out to you to get some coaching.
Right on.
Thank you so much, Fletcher. Definitely going to have you back on the show, because I've got 6 other questions I need to ask you.
Okay, that sounds good.
And that whole I am fascinated about that whole female male equality. I think that's a really big. I think it's time that we break that down and just get on with it.
Yeah.
With
I'm with you.
with pay and all that sort of stuff. So
I'm with you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for spending time with us. 48 minutes to be exact.
It was delightful. So thank you so much.
And I'll send you the picture of my mate, and you can meet your double.
Right on. And you'll let me know when this is posted.
Monday. It'll be out on Monday. Sunday night your time, Monday morning my time. So I'll send you.
Wonderful.
I'll send you all the. I can't hold on to this. This is gold. It needs to go out straight away. All right, buddy. Thank you so much, and we'll catch up with you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Joey. Good to meet you.
You've been listening to the Secret Means Business podcast. Now, as I was saying, this podcast will be out on Monday. And on Thursdays, we do retro podcasts. So we've got an intensive library of all interesting conversations and interviews. So make sure you listen to the latest retro. Hit like and subscribe. And again, if you want to get in touch with Fletcher, please click on his links. He's open to receiving your information, emails, and so on. Till next time, guys. Have a good one. Bye.